And then allow the attendees to introduce themselves a little further. I want to say thank you for having us to the African Diaspora Art Museum of Atlanta. Peace to Dr. Fahamu Peku for organizing us today. Very happy to be here. So I am Scott Heath. I am currently a visiting assistant professor at Loyola University, New Orleans. It's hard to say it because I'm currently in negotiations. I'm also recently a 2021 Nasir Jones Hip Hop Fellow at the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research at Harvard University. And I am honored to moderate this conversation. It's going to be a bit of a conversation and a bit of an agitation as well. I'm reading actually from people's websites, so bear with me. And I actually prefer this too, because I think I always say they're going to look, so decide what they're going to see when they look. You know, define yourself. So Rion Amilcar Scott is the author of the story collection "The World Doesn't Require You," a finalist for the Penn Gene Stein Book Award. His debut story collection, Insurrections, was awarded the 2017 Penn Bingham Prize for debut fiction and the 2017 Hillsdale Award for the Fellowship of Southern Writers. His work has been published in journals such as The New Yorker, The Kenyon Review, Crab Orchard Review, and The Rumpus, among others. One of his stories was listed as a notable in Best American Stories 2018, and one of his essays was listed as a notable in Best American Essays 2015. He was raised in Silver Spring, Maryland, and earned an MFA from George Mason University, where he won the Mary Roberts Reinhardt Award, a completion fellowship, and an alumni exemplar award. He has received fellowships from Breadloaf Writing Conference, Kimbilio, and the Colgate Writing Conference, as well as a 2019 Maryland Individual Artist Award. Presently, he teaches creative writing at the University of Maryland, which is dope. Jason Reynolds is an American author who writes novels and poetry for young adults and middle grade audiences, including Ghost, a National Book Award finalist for young people's literature. Born in DC and raised in neighboring Oxon Hill, Maryland, Reynolds found inspiration in rap to begin writing poetry at 9 years old. He focused on poetry for approximately the next 2 decades, only reading a novel cover to cover for the first time at age 17, and publishing several poetry collections before he published his own first novel, When I Was the Greatest, in 2014. He won the Coretta Scott King John Steptoe Award for New Talent for this first work of prose, and 7 more novels followed in the next 4 years, including Ghost, 2016, and 2 more books in what became his New York Times best-selling track series, Patina, 2017, Sunny, 2018. As Brave as You, winner of the 2016 Kirkus Prize, the 2017 NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work for Youth, Teen, and the 2017 Schneider Family Book Award. And my nephew will love this, a Marvel Comics novel called Miles Morales, Spider-Man, 2017. Reynolds returned to poetry with Long Way Down in 2017, a novel in verse, which was named a Newbery Honor Book, a Prince Honor Book, and Best Young Adult Work by the Mystery Writers of America's Edgar Awards, which is also dope. Kiese Laymon is probably the most famous writer in the room today. He is so famous that he does not have a website. He doesn't need one. So I'm reading from his Wikipedia page. Kiese is an American writer, editor, and professor of English and creative writing at the University of Mississippi. Recently, you came back south, right? He is the author of 3 full-length books, a novel, Long Division, 2013, and 2 memoirs, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, and Heavy, in 2018. Laymon's work deals with American racism, feminism, family, masculinity, geography, hip-hop, and Southern Black life, all things we love. His provocations, essays, and other works of short fiction appear on his blog, Cold Drink, as well as featured pieces written by guest contributors. Laymon has written essays and stories for numerous online publications, including Gawker, ESPN, The Washington Post, The New York Times, NPR, BuzzFeed, and The Guardian. Welcome. Cheers. So what I'd like to do, actually just to build upon your public biographies, is ask that each of you say hello, say a few words. And this seems to be the tradition of the ADAMA salons. A few words about your practice. I am particularly interested in your practice now, meaning how it may or may not be different or differently informed over the past few months of our collective quarantine, collective protest, all of that. So I suppose we'll start with Rion. Rion, I don't want to mispronounce, I'm sorry.
Rion.
Rion, okay. I was like in the middle, okay.
I'm happy to be here. These two brothers are 2 of my favorite writers right now. And Jason has the additional benefit of being one of my son's favorite writers. He's working his way through he's working his way through the track series right now. Yeah, my practice changes all the time, and we've all been hit with something crazy, and I feel like I was just getting my legs back, and I had just started figuring out what I was doing, and then boom, I was trapped in the house, and that forced me to go way, 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 way introspective, and I was just seeing myself in such different ways. I put everything to the side that I was working on, and I started foolishly writing this pandemic thing. I guess I'll call it a novel, pandemic novel. It's sort of something I was writing sort of evolved into that. And at just some point, I was just like, everything's changing so drastically. It's best to just sit back and observe. So I've been sitting back and observing and just reading, a massive amount of books. It's constantly, reading, and that's basically what I've been doing: reading, taking notes, and thinking.
Take that. We'll go Jason next.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar. First of all, it's good to be here. It's funny, Fahamu reached out, asked me to be a part of it, but I didn't know who else was on it. But I always say yes to Fahamu because most of us just say yes to Fahamu for whatever he asks. And then I saw who else was on it, and it's dope because these brothers are people that I know and also that I really respect. I like to believe that one of these days I'll be the perfect amalgamation of the both of them in my own work. You know what I mean? As I continue to practice and work. In terms of that practice though, and the process of that, for me, man, I don't I am pretty I probably say a bit obsessive. I sit at the computer or at my notepad. So here's the thing, I sit at the computer every day around 7 o'clock in the morning. Still, like even now, I have to, this is sort of the altar for me. This is, for a lot of us, or at least for me, this is sort of the thing that I know is there, right? And so I sort of show up every day. It's not always a good day. What I've learned though, over the course of this quarantine is that I had to go back to the pen and pad. There's something about the technology that's not, I can't do it, right? And I don't know if it's because I've been inundated with the information. I don't know if it's because of my anxiety around the world that we live in, which is a very real thing for me. But for some reason, the pen and pad has been where I've been able to process my thoughts and like really do my work. And so everything is, I've got like stenos all over my house at the moment because I'm just kind of like scribbling everything down. And that's been the way that I've been able to kind of get the work done. There is work being done on my side. I just got a lot of work to do all the time. And so, you know, I'm putting in about 4 hours a day, every single day, minus Saturday and Sunday, but Monday through Friday, I'm putting in about 4 hours, and it's brutal and it's grueling. And usually at the end of it, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and lay on the couch and see what's happening on 90 Day Fiance or whatever, because I need to, like, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I try to give up about 4 hours for sure. And there's work coming. I got stuff coming. I'm working. Things are getting done. So things are happening for sure.
That's remarkable. Man, it's hard to work sometimes under these conditions. Kiese?
Yo, I'm just so happy to be here with y'all. You know, I'm like Jason in that the only thing consistent in my life is my writing. Only in terms of practice, you know what I mean? Like I eat at a different time every day. I'll drink water, whatever, at a different time. But you know, when I wake up, for the most part, I do my work. I do my work before I go to bed, and I just spend the weekend revising. But I'm still just one of those dudes. It's like I just always need like I need to believe somebody. I just need hater. I need haterism to like fuel me. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know how else to put it. And that's what's so ill about being on here with y'all is because, you know, when y'all introduce yourselves, I was like, man, I love these brothers, but I never been in the same room with them. And then that shit brought back all of those memories I had of living in Maryland that one year. I played basketball at the Mather, and all them niggas up there was calling me Bama. And then all of a sudden I was like, yo, what is this feeling I'm feeling right now? And I'm like, oh, it's that residual shit. You know what I mean? So like, I just always am looking for something not to drive me to write, but to drive me to go beyond that point of comfortability in writing. And for me, it's often slights, real talk. But I do think this pandemic has fucked me up because I don't usually get to see faces like this on my same screen that I'm writing. You know, a lot of times they're faces that I never imagined being in my space, my physical space, but also my writing space. You know, and I don't know. I don't know if people have written about what it means to have all these meetings in the same screen that you do your work. So I find myself writing on pads a lot, writing on my ironically, my phone, but then eventually it has to come over here to the computer. So, and I've been in, you know, first month I didn't do shit. I needed to not do anything, but I've been kind of zoning lately. So I've been putting in work that I hope is decent.
Man, you don't feel hated on enough?
I don't, fam. Like you got to be a reputable foe. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot of motherfuckers who hate, but like I'm just like at this point, okay, hate. But you know that Maryland hate is different because like you just want, if you from where we from down here, you just want Maryland to love you. And then Maryland niggas was like, Bama this, Bama that, you know, nigga, you smelling like catfish. I'm like, oh Lord have mercy, you know.
Well, I say that because I feel like, well, I'm gonna say two things and then that I want to come back to because I sort of had a little trajectory in mind, but I feel like we're all getting hated on. And the thing is, I've been slow to finally get around to trying to produce something, you know, and I got, as a matter of fact, to do tomorrow. But I was thinking about these screens and thinking about, you know, Jason saying he, you know, returned to the pen and pad, and that sort of thing. And it's like, it's so interesting. You know, I was talking to some colleagues about this with regard to teaching and how to go online. And I know some of you, at least a couple of you teach, and how to go online in the coming semesters. And I was sort of issued a warning. I said, look, you know, you gotta be charismatic. I say you're competing, you know, I say you're competing when they sit down to the screen, they're competing with news reports, TikTok dances, emails from their friends, Netflix originals, like all of that stuff is coming on the screen probably at the same time that you're talking, right? But I feel like there's something potentially, and I don't want to I don't want to throw this word around too much because we do sometimes, but potentially traumatizing. Like they're sitting on the screen, they're getting the TikToks, they're getting the emails, but they're also seeing images of Black people being murdered. They're also hearing, you know, various elected officials spew lies. They are seeing sweaty Americans protest, you know, in defense of their lives. All of that, and then they're going to sit down and try to listen to you talk about, you know, a sonnet or whatever. And so, but I think there's something that we're all going to be contending with, right? Which is that the same screen that we're speaking into now is a screen in which we're receiving all this other information. And part of maybe what slowed down my process is a little information overload, you know? And the fact that you're returning to that same space where you see all that crap to also try to learn something or produce something, I think is going to be difficult for all of us. You can respond if you like. I do want to come back to this idea around the technology and stuff, but
I want to say this. I want to say this, man. I wonder. That's a good point. Something I hadn't really thought about. I also wonder if that's why I've been able to work, because my population, the demographic of who I write for, this is what I've been up against since I've been in this industry, right? Like I've been competing with TikTok and YouTube and video games every single day of my life is that competition. And so I think perhaps that's the reason why I'm sort of like, yeah, I mean, work is work. I'm still competing because my demographic for the most part has been between the ages of 10 and 18 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I worry that those same young people have also been exposed to, you know, that officer in Minnesota, you know?
Yeah, but they were exposed to it in 2014, 2016. They were exposed.
Sadly, yeah. Right. You're right.
I mean, even before police brutality, even before the videotaping, the constant inundation of police brutality, they were exposed to World Star, right? Whether it's you know what I mean? Like it isn't, I don't know. I think it's a perennial thing. We don't know what the outcome will be for 20 more years, but I don't think it's a every now and then thing. I think it's always been a constant thing. I mean, the children alive today have never lived in America who've not been at war.
It's true.
Yeah, and one thing I also say about Jason, from reading Jason's work and from being on stage with him and seeing him interact with kids is like, I believe what you just said, fam, because, you know, you're one of the few people who I've met in life who are, you know, we're all around the same age, but, you know, there's nothing in you that seems like you want to talk down to kids, right? Like, it seems like you really have to, you seem like you spend a lot of time imagining what they imagine. Also, and I asked you this question before, but like consuming some of what they consume, and that doesn't mean you have to make yourself a child at all. But I think it takes a lot. And I think we don't talk enough about the art of connecting the readers. We talk about the way we create art. But I think like the art of connecting the readers has a lot to do with like imagining like the rhythms of those readers. So you have to sometimes know what those readers eat, watch what those readers watch. And I've seen Jason do that in person. And you know, I think I can do that with particular kind of readership, but I'm super intimidated at doing that with people between the ages of 10 to 18, though everything I want it to be accessible to them in some way. But for me, that's the hardest group in the world to actually like feel like I know, but at the same time, it's the most important group in the world of readers. So yeah, I'm glad y'all brought that up.
Man, y'all got me going in this direction now. I mean, something else that's occurred to me too, right, is when thinking about the potentially traumatizing stuff, you know, the police brutality, the actual, I mean, we're actually watching snuff films, you know, and then to see people, all types of people come out and protest, you know, that activity. It occurs to me too that, you know, there's a way in which we can see stuff on screens and it's remote to us. Like, or say you're sitting isolated, quarantined, and you're seeing all the stuff that's happening in the world, right? The same people watching that stuff are going to come back to our classrooms or come back to your pages. But I also like to remind people that, you know, those protesters and those protests aren't just things that the young people, especially, or or older ones, I think, but especially the youth are watching. Like those people, they are the protesters, right? Like they are the protesters. So it's you kind of I don't know. It just makes me think about how to reconsider the experience of my audience. You know, like who are you talking to? And you're talking to people coming, you're like fresh off the street. You know.
Well,
You might say we've been doing that anyway, but it's this is a crucial time, right?
I mean, it's interesting how, you know, the young people are the ones who are actually making this happen, are actually leading the way. They figured out something that we never figured out. So that's something else to take into consideration when you're writing for them, that they're in many ways way more sophisticated and have a way more have this stronger and better understanding than we ever did.
And I often wonder, can I just say also, like, so the three of us are writers, and the three of us are writing, well, Kiese writes both, but a lot, fiction, nonfiction, etc. And there's always the question, and I've always wanted to talk to other writers about this because I just disagree, but I think it's something that comes up all the time, and it's this adage that we all, like every writer you ask, if you ask a writer who you write for, they'll all have the same answer, right? They'll say, I write for myself. I don't think about the audience member. And I just think it's bogus. I just don't believe it's true. Like, I'm talking about all of our heroes have said it. All of my contemporaries say it. Every educator says it. Everybody says it. And I'm like, it feels like such a privileged thing to say. And I'm like, for me, I'm like, no, I know, I'm specifically I'm thinking about the people that I'm writing for when I'm doing the work. But we never have parsed out this conversation about this whole, like, who do you write for thing? Brothers, y'all know this. Every writer will say, I write for myself. I don't think about my audience. I don't think about this. Once you do that, you ruin it for yourself. Once you do that, then the work's going to get all muddy. And it's like, that just really confuses me and confounds me.
But don't you try to entertain yourself first?
What do you say, Rion?
Don't you try to entertain yourself first?
I think both and. Right? I think that both things can be happening, right? The reality is that I love telling these stories. So that's the part of me, right? I love telling these particular stories. But there's no way, if I claim to be, like, I'm like Kiese was saying, I'm really trying to connect with them. Like, I'm going into it intentionally thinking about your son, right? Like, I'm thinking about your son. And so in order for this to work, I have to think about your son. I'm not 11, I'm not 10, I'm 36 years old. I better be thinking about 11-year-olds when I'm doing this work in order for it to work. So I think it's a little disingenuous when people just be like, oh, nah, it's all me. I'm worried about me. Look, if I don't like the book, it ain't coming out. So that's where I am, right? But in terms of, like, am I thinking about the audience? I'm thinking about the audience. And I all have to, but we act like it's this blanketed thing where all of us are like, nah, nobody thinks about the audience, you know?
I mean, fam, like I agree with you. You know, I mean, and I do think we are parts of us are part of that audience, but I never say that shit. And the reason I don't say it is because I think a lot of us were encouraged to write ourselves out of literature in schools. You know what I'm saying? We were encouraged to write ourselves out of literature. And so it took me so long imagining other audiences because I didn't trust the audience that, like, American schools and American literary, like, production had told me I was. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I was using words like hitherto in my work. Like, I'm not a hitherto type nigga. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, you are.
Like I think people sometimes tell on themselves when they're like, oh, I just write for me. And I'm like, so when I say there's an art to connecting with readers, like, I mean that shit, fam. And I think Black folks more than anybody, like, we understand the performance that it takes to get home every day. My mama got to perform to get out the grocery store. My granny got to perform to fucking, like, you know, get out of Walmart. Like, you know, Lord knows we all have to perform in a particular way. So that means particular audiences get to see us perform all the time. And so my goal is when I'm I'm trying to not put that force, that white forceful force at the center of my work, but I'm not going to front like they not there. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to write to people who, like, look like me, piss like me, don't piss like me, like, never have been written to. But the fucked up part of it is, at least for me, I don't know about y'all, is, like, as much as I'm trying to create multifaceted Black shit, My editor is white. My fucking associate editor was white. My publisher is white. The publicists are white. My agents are white. Like, so my point is, like, I agree. It's not pure. And I think sometimes we say that shit to get out of really navigating that question. You know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah, I just never believe it when people say it. But some people write so tightly and don't open that shit up for anybody else. I actually do believe there are some people who write for themselves and you can see it, but they don't realize when they say that shit, they telling on their art.
I mean, I would tend to agree. I mean, coming out of journalism, I always thought of it as a form of communication, right? And I'm I'm always entertaining myself. There are a million different inside jokes within my work. But then there are inside jokes with only my brothers would get. And then there are inside jokes that are things that I think only Black folks would get, you know. And if you ask me this question generally, I say, you know, I'm writing for Black folks. I'm writing for Black people, and I want anybody's welcome. But first and foremost, I'm writing for Black folks.
See, that makes sense to me. I'm just like, I'm just glad we are having this discussion, this particular part of it, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot. I mean, I think about, like, look, we all look, at least it can be presumed that so many of us have at some point or other studied Toni Morrison. Toni talks about it all the time. And what I always used to be bummed about is Toni even said that once you start thinking about anybody else, right? It's like, but at the same time, Toni also said that she write for Black people. Like it's like, and I think we're not wrestling enough with it. It's just like this weird blanket thing. I just wanted to bring it in. My bad, brother. I'm done. I just wanted to, it's something that I wanted to get off my chest.
Well, I have an idea. I'm not going to say what I think yet because I'm going to ask you. But look, if you're not writing for an audience, then why just leave it in your diary? Why did you publish it? Like, why did you seek an editor and an agent in a publishing house unless you have an audience in mind, you know, or you wish to be read and heard and seen, right? So, and sometimes even getting that stuff out can be difficult. We know we're writing for somebody else because of the troubles people have just getting stuff published sometimes, you know. I don't know. I tell people I write for my friends. But I did want to acknowledge a whole bunch of comments. There's some shout outs from South Carolina and Maryland. And somebody asked me what was in my glass. It's bourbon. And we'll come back to it. I'm not ignoring you. But this is actually, I wanna use this opportunity to segue via an obsession of mine. Well, I shouldn't say an obsession. People overuse that term too, but something I keep coming back to, and it's from Langston Hughes's The Big C, which he published in 1940, if I'm not mistaken. And here's just a bit. He said, I was there, and he's talking about the Harlem Renaissance, right? I was there. I had a swell time while it lasted, but I thought it wouldn't last long. For how could a large and enthusiastic number of people be crazy about Negroes forever? They thought the race problem had at last been solved through art plus Gladys Bentley. I don't know what made many Negroes think that, except that they were mostly intellectuals doing the thinking. And here's my part. The ordinary Negroes hadn't heard of the Negro Renaissance. And if they had, it hadn't raised their wages any. And I loved it. And he's trolling. He's trolling himself because he was the reluctant patron saint of the Harlem Renaissance. But I think it speaks to, as other writers, a thing that other writers have spoken to, you know, Nina Simone, who said it's the duty of an artist to reflect the times. Tony K. Bambara, who said it's a writer's job to make the revolution irresistible. This idea that, particularly during times of trouble, times of crisis, and here we are, that a writer, and they're talking about Black writers especially, has not only a responsibility to think of, to imagine their audience, but to do something for that audience. And I suppose I'm placing this here to see how you feel about this notion, you know, if you're interested in raising people's wages through your work.
No, I think. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I mean, I think that's where I am right now, like this morning with my work, fam, because you know, the cynical part of me thinks the cynical part, right? I have other parts, but the cynical part of me is like, you know, never have Black people who know white people been so fairly compensated for the work that they're doing. I'm talking about in the last few months, you know, and we know that took a lot of shit. You know what I'm saying? Like in publishing, it took a lot. And then it took Jasmine jumping out and being like, look, these motherfuckers did me this way. And I think that opened up a lot of shit that should have already been opened up, for example. Right. And so white folks now in my personal life are offering me shit that like I think they should have offered before, but like fair shit. Right. My cousin who just died 3 or 4 days ago, and his sister and his brother, they weren't reaping any benefit yet from this so-called awakening. And so I'm not saying we need to wait for white folk to do it, but I do think we need to have a tough conversation of what it means for those of us who might be getting what we are deserved. Like, how do we speak for essential workers if they're us or people in our family who aren't getting again, I'm being cynical, like the benefits of this, like probably, you know, momentary awakening by like these white corporations and these white people. Like, what responsibility do they have? Yes. But what responsibility do we have as people who might be reaping a benefit? I'm not saying we're not getting shit we don't deserve. I think we're getting what we do deserve, but there's still like millions of niggas out there who are not getting anything. And white people can't use them to shield them from their own like white supremacy and anti-Blackness, like, which is a lot of what I think is happening. Like, we are like magnificent, shiny shields in a way, as of where the nigga who like mows the yard is not. So what do we have to do? Do you know what I mean? That's one of the questions I'm interested in thinking about.
Me too. I mean, ultimately, I think that what's tricky about this moment is that if Black people aren't careful, they'll think they're exceptional. Right? So like those of us who are on the other side of that wall, those of us who are being treated quote unquote fairly at the moment, even though we're always going to be undervalued, first of all, because that's how business works. But those of us who are at least getting a little more than we've been getting, I think we just have to be vigilant in knowing that like ain't nothing exceptional about any of us. Like I'm no different than the brothers who live on my block. I'm no different than my own 2 brothers who are not living this way. And I think if I keep that in mind, then I have to then justify why I live the life that I live. And that justification isn't a justification for white people. It's not even necessarily a justification for Black people. It's me making sure that I'm doing my job to ensure that I don't exceptionalize myself and then sort of figure out how to spread resources. What I try to do is, look, I got a little teeny bit of power in this industry, and I'm speaking specifically about literature because this is where I can affect change in terms of creating economic base for other Black people, right? Which is also complicated because I gotta walk them into this system. But what I've been trying to do over the last 5 years is literally walk them in, right? It's like, I think sometimes when you get a little bump, you get a little, the eyes are on you and they talking about you here, there, and you know, whatever, scarcity will have you believe that you can't make another king, right? When the truth of the matter is, it's your responsibility to make another king, right? It's like, so if I know that there are people way more talented than I will ever be who just haven't gotten their shot, it's for me to make the call. It's for me to introduce them to their agent. It's for me to walk them through the door and say, listen, I ain't got nothing to lose, right? But if I can help you gain a little bit, then let's go out here and let's also, the more the merrier. Like, I feel like let's go ahead and let's shake the table. I feel like I want to, like, let's turn it all over. I want every Kiese Laymon to come in the door and make a mess of things. I want every Rion, what Rion's writing, if we had 50 more of them, right? Like, because ain't nobody doing what Rion doing. Robert Jones, if we had 50 more of them, right? Jasmine, we put Jasmine up here. But if there were 50 more Jasmines, yo, come on, man. And we can actually do that because those of us with the power can leverage the power to say, look, this is somebody I'm vouching for. This is somebody that look, give me a little less if it means presenting them with a little more opportunity, whatever, we can figure it out. I ain't got no kids. I don't got, it's just me. So those of us who have that kind of privilege, and it's a privilege, I think we got to spread it out a little bit.
I'm jumping in because I do want to attend to, you got questions coming in, but also I want to compound this question a little bit. Questions coming in, shout out from Mississippi. Love the natural beards. I actually just
I live all the time. This is it for me.
I actually literally just a few minutes ago shaved it down a little bit, so I feel at a loss. But people checking out your phenotype, and I'm thinking about phenotype and bodies, and there's been a lot of conversation about Black bodies versus Black people. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this debate, but it's you know, it's semiotic on a certain level. But here's something to compound. It's always a conflict between performative solidarity and systemic change. Cultural creators will reap the benefits because it is easier to wage a cultural war. We have been here countless times. I've been thinking along those lines and wondering, you know, as things progress with this potential revolution, what will ensure that the Black Lives Matter movement, for instance, is not just a public art revolution or a performance art revolution. So I suppose I'm pointing you back to also the writer's responsibility to something beyond even just the industry, the work of writing itself. I mean, do you feel compelled, for instance, to physically be on the line, like physically be in the midst of people who are agitating for our freedoms, you know, physically be there? I don't know, physically serve at a soup kitchen for people who are out of work because of COVID, you know, in order, and maybe even in order to better inform your writing. I mean, do you feel I guess I'm asking as an artist, do you feel the need to field in order to interpret, speak to, represent the field? By field, I mean the people. This is the part where I'm agitating.
No, I often say that it's like being a Black writer is often like being a war profiteer sometimes, you know. And this, you know, in this moment they put us on lists. All three of us are on these lists, and then you look at your book sales. It's like, wow, I'm selling more books now than in the months, you know, since it came out. And all it took was for a cop to kneel on a man's neck, and it's, you know, it's just like a, you know, it's this mixed thing, and you know, but I often think that, you know, I feel like you know, a lot of my place is where I'm best suited is to be an observer and to take in a lot. Me personally, to take in what's going on and try to reflect it back in some way. You know, and you know, put my money on the line, the little that I can spare, or whatever I can spare, put that on the line. You know, and you know, I'm observing, I'm taking a lot in. I'm trying to put some sort of emotional and intellectual context to things, and that's gonna take some time. And there are a lot of different things that you know, that I need to observe, to read, to see. So that's kind of where I'm at personally. Like,
but that was like James Baldwin's vocation as a witness, right? Like, you know, he came back from Europe because he had to see, right? Like, hold on, stuff is going on. I gotta get on the ground.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But so, and I think what you're talking about, you know, processing we may be processing it for a very long time. Actually, I don't know if it's about hot takes, right?
It's not. It isn't. It really, and they'll ask for that, you know. You know, they'll come to us, and you know, some people they'll go for that. You know, they'll take the moment. They'll take their $50 fee, and say absolutely nothing. But I think, me personally, I have to sit with things. But you know what I will say. You know, Jason was just talking about, you know, the you know, how false the scarcity model is, and one thing that I love is that it feels like a lot of Black writers who support each other, we don't believe in that. We've learned from the mistakes of previous generations, and Kiese and a bunch of other folks, He could talk a little bit more about this. Spearheaded a powerful open letter, not like that stupid open letter that came out the other day, but a very powerful open letter that actually made some arguments and said something and said very specific things. And that felt like a start of something very important. And that felt like moving beyond just, us sitting in our homes by ourselves and thinking things.
Yeah, I want to say something about, I believe in like I believe in the Baldwinian model of, if you love something, you love it enough to critique it. And I think I hold that shit too close to heart because I believe in critiquing everything that I feel some affinity for. But I'm gonna throw that out the window right now and say that, like, I do believe like this generation or whatever cadre of Black writers that you see, and this might get some people mad, fam, but we not special, but I think we do have a special love for Black people. And I think I see far fewer writers of like power trying to be the only one. Like Jason said, like I've seen Jason walk people into this industry. We know everybody on this call has open arms. You know what I mean? Like if I get in a door, I know writers in previous generations who wanted to be the only nigga at the party. I'm not going to a party if I'm the only nigga. I want the whole party to become niggas. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not even just a phrase. That's like as real talk as I can get. Like we want as many dope, wonderful people. And more importantly than getting in, I think what you see with a lot of us, and I think a lot of people treated me this way, is that you want to make sure that people's hearts are okay, because this shit is in some way like fluffy literature, but it can mangle your fucking insides. It can destroy your ass. So I just think that we are doing a better job than we were taught to care, to love, to appreciate, and to hoist. Do you know what I'm saying? And to go back to what Jason's point is, and your Scott question, and your question, Scott, like again, I don't have kids, I live alone. I'm still that motherfucker. Like if I see cops stopping anybody Black, I'm always stopping to like intervene. Like, and that's ignorant. One, because I can't run no more, Two, because like that'll be two niggas that get shot. But like that's just impulse. You know what I'm saying? That's just like a Central Mississippi impulse. But I think if I had children, that impulse would die. Do you know what I mean? So I just wanted to speak to both of those.
And all I really add is I think our generation, or this sort of era right now, I think we're also willing to complicate the argument, right? Like I think your question was, do we feel any impulse to go and put our bodies down there on the front line? My answer is yes, I do feel that impulse. My truth is I have 75-year-old parents, right? In the middle of a coronavirus pandemic. So am I going? No, I'm not, like, that's just the reality. That's my truth based on what my responsibilities, right? And does that mean that I don't care and love these young people fighting? No. I fully do. But I also am accountable to my mother, who is 75, who will not survive if she contracts this illness. That is a truth, right? The other thing I think that we do a good job at is we understand like that's okay, because there are enough of us who can do that part of it. So we can have the scribes, we can have the frontliners. My personal role in this movement thus far has been translation, right? My job is to figure out how to tell an 8-year-old what's happening. That's what I've been doing for the last 4 months, is figuring out how do I contextualize this and synthesize this for a 9.5-year-old, 10-year-old who's trying to figure out, what's going on. Why is there fire in their community, right? My parents don't know how to talk to me about this, but that's my role in this particular part of the movement. And it shouldn't be dismissed or seen as more important or less important than all the other roles. And I think right now, Black writers, I think Kiese is right. This particular crop, a lot of us are like, nah, I know what time it is. I'm fully invested in us. I love us. But I also know that in order for us to move forward and for order for us to be sustainable, all pistons have to be firing. Everything has to be happening simultaneously. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think there's a role, not even think, I know there's a role for the witness. There's a role for the translator, interpreter. I think that role is actually going to really kick in the next months when those people who are, especially the young people who are physically protesting, right? When they come back home, or come back to our classrooms or come back to our books, I think it's our responsibility to tell them what they've been doing, which is to say, this isn't the first cycle of Black American protest, right? Mm-hmm. And there is a way in which I think people unfortunately try to reinvent the wheel every time, right? I mean, the way I look at it is each generation, Black people say the thing and do the thing and protest the thing, and they throw the alley-oop. They throw the ball up for America, white America, to take the shot. If we like keep throwing the ball, here it is. Like shoot it, right? And so we see this, and I mean those shots keep missing, or maybe they, some of them roll in. But it makes me think of what I classify as a new genre of literature. I call it the Juneteenth letter. I think of it as a genre, which is these letters you saw, of course, coming out from organizations and institutions and some individuals. I think it's worthy of a name, right? So, yeah. And I wonder what you think about that. Also, sort of as juxtaposed with protest literature. What you expect to see after we meditate and process. What is happening right now. I like in the Kung Fu movies when you see, the Kung Fu master just meditating for a while, and then he jumps up and kicks some butt or whatever, and then he, might meditate again and rest and then jump up. There's a lot of meditation involved in the fight, right? I think that meditation is essential to the fight. Maybe what a lot of artists ought to be doing right now is meditating on what's happening, But yeah, a couple of genres: the Juneteenth letter and the protest, the protest novel, as it were. Do you think this moment is going to influence the direction of Black literature?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question.
Can't help but.
Right. And I think that the sad part to me is that, I think I'm older than y'all. But I can remember damn near every sensory expression in my body when I watched Rodney King get his ass beat. And what I want to tell everybody is that had we been in a pandemic where we could not go outside at the height of our bodily quote unquote prowess, and I'm not trying to be ableist, if we would have seen that beating then, the shit would have gone up then, not just LA, not just Atlanta, not just Jackson, the entire shit. So I think there's something to speak to in terms of that meditative practice. And what we had to do as a world and really as a nation is not just meditate, but be quiet and hope that we could keep our families alive and be silent, while we know part of what we were suffering from was like the mechanical machinations of a fucking white maniac put in place by the worst of white people. Like, so while we were meditating, we knew we were watching that at the same time. So I want to give these young folks all the fucking credit in the world because we following right now, right? But at the same time, I think we can't forget that pandemic made us be contemplative in ways that we might not want to admit.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it was the perfect storm.
It was.
Right? Like I think that what we'll see when we look back on it, I mean, and by looking back on it, I mean, look, this is stuff that people are already thinking about. Everybody is sort of like trying to figure out how to frame what's happening, right? Like we might not be putting it on a page yet, but we're thinking about it. And this situation, Ferguson, the reason that Ferguson went up the way it went up is because of certain economic factors that never get talked about, right? But the truth of the matter is Ferguson, Baltimore, these cities, the reason they went up like that is because you had a huge population of people who didn't have to go to work, right? You had a huge population of people who were unemployed in these towns and in these cities who were like, yo, I'm going out there and fighting because honestly, when Monday comes, I have very little to lose. This is also the reason why you see a lot less of this. No offense to all my New Yorkers, I was a New Yorker for a long time, but the truth is the economic base of New York City and sort of the amount of money being pushed through New York City oftentimes hinders people because I got to pay a $3,000 rent. And so if you want me to get out there and do this, that, and the third, it gets complicated because I got babies to feed and I got a $3,000 rent. That's the truth. But when you look at what's happening right now, the fact that every single person on earth, not everybody, because we have essential workers who most of whom are Black and working in places that are going to unfortunately get them jammed up, which is a whole other conversation. But a huge population of people on Earth is at home. It's at home. And so we got a clean videotape, right? Which means there's nothing to discuss here. There's ain't no muddiness, right? A clean videotape, right. And millions of people sitting in the house. Yo, like it literally, this opportunity, I look at the young kids, I'm like, yo, if nothing else, I'm just proud that they seized the moment. Like they realized, wait a minute, we out of school, ain't nothing happening, ain't nobody got no jobs, ain't nobody got no, yo, let's get it. Like, and there's something to be said for that. And I shout out to them. I'll tell you this last thing, I'll shut up in a second, but I knew that the greatest moment I've had over the last 3 months is my 75-year-old mother calling me. And now that generation is complicated in a lot of ways, and they have every right to be, but they also, when we talk about respectability, when we talk about assimilationism, when we talk about all of that, like they were sort of at the seat of a lot of that stuff because of their own experiences and the deadly hand of racist America and what it did to them. And my mother calls me and she's like, yo, I say, how you feeling? You feel safe? And she's like, man, honestly, I'm just proud. I'm proud of them kids. And she said, and my homegirls, my friends, all of her friends are in their 70s. She said, and I have to tell my friends every night, watch your mouth. Watch how you talk about these kids. Watch how you talk about these young people who are out there fighting for your old ass freedom. You still ain't free. They fighting for you. They laying their lives on the line. And it may not look like you want it to look. It may not sound like you want it to sound. But the truth of the matter is, these are our children, and they're doing it for all the right reasons. Who are we to denigrate them and to dismiss them, even if you don't think they're doing it the right way? Well, you ain't out there, so at the end of the day, show a little love. And that was the moment I realized, oh yeah, something is happening, right?
You know what? Now I'll add to that. Well, I can't add to that because it's beautiful. I'll say along with that, because some people have talked about what you said earlier in the chat, Jason, regarding your parents, the dangers to our bodies beyond, what's happening, beyond tear gas, right? Literally, people are willing to endanger themselves in the face of this virus to express what they're expressing on the street, and in protest. So there's a double, there's a double commitment, a double in enthusiasm really for what is meaningful that's being displayed there. That's all. That's what I want to say about that. I can go to the chat some more. I feel like I've said more than I should. So let's see what people are talking about. I know y'all like to talk. You don't have to wait.
you got questions in the Q&A box too.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to check on. Oh, you know what? Thanks for telling me that.
I got you.
What question did you see? Go ahead.
Oh, nah. Everybody got questions for Kiese because he's famous. So like, I don't really, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I said that. They can just go to Wikipedia for that.
Hey, unmute. Hey, I'm getting you back. I owe you a few anyway, bro. Don't worry about it. Go ahead, take these.
Here's a question from the Q&A. Thanks for alerting me to the Q&A because I was just reading the chat. I wasn't over in the Q&A. So, Jetta Mayberry, I've heard each of you cite hip hop or go-go in reference to your work. Can you comment on the ways music informs our writing, if not shapes it directly? Is that unique to our culture? I'm gonna add to Jetta Mayberry's question and say, will hip hop reopen after the pandemic? So yeah, he's asking about how hip hop informs your work.
Yo, can I add a part, another part to that question?
Sure.
Rion, like, what were you listening to when you wrote Insurrections?
Oof.
Insurrections?
Oof.
Wow.
I mean, was there one song that was like most prominent during the creation of that?
It's hard to say because Insurrections came together over so long, like
Okay.
the last song, the last book, I was listening to a lot of soca and calypso just to get a fix on it because I wanted to capture my parents' accent, but I didn't, I wanted to capture the accent like it was when I was a child, not how they were, today. So I was listening to a lot of Calypso. I mean, there's always a lot of Wu-Tang floating around. I'm trying to think. So I'm trying, insurrections. I don't know. I think that it came together over such a long period of time. It's hard to say. But I think, the story like 202 Checkmates, my interest in chess started because of Wu-Tang,
Wow.
And so that story, even though it seems like probably the least hip hop story in the book, was very, highly influenced by the first Wu-Tang album, the first GZA album, just because, I wanted to learn chess. I wanted to be on something that those brothers were on. And then I realized I'm no good at chess. So I gotta write fiction about it.
Yo, when I taught it the first time, one of my I shouldn't say smartest, but like usually sharp students was like, he had to be listening to a lot of RZA to do this. And I'm intentionally not a Wu-Tang.
I know.
Dude. And so I wanted to push back and be like, nah. But he wrote a paper on it, and they wrote a paper on it, and I was just like, yeah, I can see that. I've been meaning to ask you that. So anyway,
wow.
I can feel it.
I'm glad someone picked up on that.
Structurally too, because anyway.
But you know something you picked up on, the coup. I'm always Bruce Riley is always in my work,
Man.
I think a lot of my political understanding, a lot of my storytelling understanding, a lot of my lyrical understanding comes from him. Political, symphonic, lyrical, narcotic, that defines me.
Man, when I was searching in like 93, just searching for art to kind of that like saw our double consciousness as less or more than double consciousness. And then that was the year that Boots was like, I got a mirror in my pocket and I practice looking hard. Like that
right.
lyric, like fucking just gave me life for like 3 or 4 years, man.
Right.
Yeah. Shout out to the coup. What I would say is, I mean, in the original question, the asker was also, he also mentioned go-go music. You know what I mean? And as somebody who grew up here in DC, like for those who don't know, that's our native music. It's like,
life, yeah.
And I would argue, and I've made this argument before and people got mad, but I still stick by it. I would argue that go-go music is the blackest music in the world. And the reason why is because I think it's an amalgam of all the black musics, right? So like it literally has all the musics. It has reggae, soca, and calypso. It has the blues and gospel. It has hip hop in it. It's got all like everything happening in South America. I mean, we using rototoms and timbales, and I mean everything is in this music. And it's like these are like cats coming from lower economic statuses who are like, yeah, bro, we just gonna make this happen. We're gonna make this music. It's a whole structure and a hierarchy to it. We know who the father of this music was, the Godfather, Chuck Brown, rest his soul, right? Like that music, there have been scholars who studied it. I won't say that because there are some brilliant scholars who've studied it. But I do think that music had a huge part of me because it's a music that in the middle of the hip hop, sort of as hip hop was growing its legs, if you grew up in this area, you wanted to be known or you wanted to hear the lead, we call him the lead talker of the go-go band say your name. We didn't care about all the rappers, right? For us, it was like, just say my name so I'm gonna be recorded on tape and then I can go get that tape and listen to it and the whole city gonna hear my block, gonna hear my name, and you felt seen, right? That music, right? A lot of us feel seen. And so it influenced me in my writing big time because that's literally what I'm trying to do. Like, that's it. And it validated us from the neighborhoods, right? It came up from the roots and said, we are gonna lift you up. Don't matter, everybody outside of DC don't know about this music, or very few people, right? But we're gonna hold it down and we're gonna lift you up and love on you in your hometown. There's something about that will always be a part of who I am.
I think I would being a DC area dude, I would piggyback on that. In my work, I write about this fictional town, and they have a music called River Beat, and basically I just ripped off Go-Go, right? The founder of River Beat is basically, he did a little bit of Chuck, James Brown in him, but there's a whole lot more Chuck Brown in him. He's the character in my first story in my second book. So I can't front on that go-go influence. That backyard band.
Yeah, backyard band. Come to DC, Kiese. We take you to the go-go, bro.
Yeah, we won't call you Obama this time.
Man, I tried to fake it when I was living there. I was trying to fake it. My body couldn't even move. My body couldn't do that shit. You know?
But you know what? The thing about go-go is, you know, I live outside of the DC area right now. I live in Annapolis, just outside of the DC area. It sounds different here. You know, I remember I was driving home. I was like, it sounds different. This don't sound the same way as it did when I was in Silver Spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, what thing I was gonna? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I support that. I lived in DC for a while myself, and now I live in New Orleans, and I think go-go is definitely understudied, and it's an important type of music that we make, particularly because it requires like a musical literacy too, and a lot of go-go bands come out of neighborhoods. A lot of them come out of high school bands,
Mm-hmm.
that's not unlike like second line bands.
Yeah.
People in the high school band, in the marching band, and they go on to become musicians in different directions. I don't know if anybody's really talked about that similarity, not to mention the sort of containment of both those musics to particular regions or even particular cities or even particular square mileage. You know what I mean? in terms of its production and its audience. So I'm sorry, Rion, go ahead, man.
Oh, the only thing I was gonna say, I was gonna go back to something Kiese said earlier about being called Obama, when he was in Maryland. I always say, you know, and it's not about music, but I would say, you know, that all that's about is that in Maryland we try to pretend like we're not in the South, and then we see a real Southern dude, real Southern nigga come outside. You know, we were like, oh, you know, they were probably like, oh shit, you know, he's exposing us. So we got to separate ourselves, right? So don't feel bad, kids. It's because we pretend. And I've totally embraced it. I'm a Southern writer, right? I totally embraced it now, right? But, you know, there's a time when I was like, we ain't the South. We the South.
I was going to ask all of you about your Southernness or your relationship to your Southernness, or whether you even thought of yourselves as Southern writers. I know you do, Kiese, but during my time in DC, I ran into, I don't know, I think about a Mason-Dixon line. On one hand, I think about actual culture, like the way people operate. On the other hand, I'm from North Carolina, particularly with older people from DC. You know, I got a lot of welcomes because some of them were from North Carolina, their grandmas were, or something. But I also found in that area of the country, people who sort of resisted their Southernness, you know, like DC has this, and Maryland, I guess, like they sort of resist their Southernness in a way, but it's evident to me. And I just want to keep this on topic too, because we do have some questions in the queue. Whether when you write, you think of yourself as a Southerner, and if that is something of your identity and experience that you think comes out, or that you try to make sure comes out in what you do on the page.
I think mine sits somewhere in the middle, because I think DC sits somewhere in the middle. Like, I think that geographically it's Southern, right? In terms of like the way the country is set up in Mason-Dixon. But if you talk to a Southerner, they'll be like, you're not from the South. And if you talk to somebody in Philadelphia, New York, they're gonna be like, you a Southern person, right? It literally is situated right on the line. And so when I think about my work, I think about how you can pull from both of those elements. DC is a metropolitan, cosmopolitan city. It's an international city, right? But my mother is a South Carolinian to the core. And both of those things, I mean, DC we got a draw. I never knew that we had a draw till I lived in New York for all those years, and then came home and was like, y'all talk funny, right? And they're like, y'all, you one of us, you know what I mean? Or you can go to Baltimore. Baltimore thinks that DC is like Georgia, even though they 30 minutes up the road, you know what I mean? And so I think that weird sort of in between space allows me the freedom to kind of play and to kind of dip my toe in both areas and really just do what I want to do. I don't feel any sort of it's weird. I don't feel like a Southern writer, but I also don't feel like a northern writer, or I just feel like me in some strange way.
Yeah, I think I found my my quote unquote Southernness through my writing. You know, creating this town and creating this space and thinking about the history. And you know, I mean, we may not have been part of the Confederacy in Maryland, but we definitely had some slaves here. Frederick Douglass definitely had to get the hell out of here, as did Harriet Tubman.
Right.
Right. So it really thinking through this stuff. That's and I agree with I agree with Jason that it's we sort of situated differently. And I think I've had my entire life up until my 30s. Thinking, ignoring that part of myself, and now it's like, okay, I'm about to explore that a little bit.
I mean, I think most interesting thing to me when we think about region is like in Notes of a Native Son, Baldwin talked about being down south, and he was writing about being in New Jersey. Like, and that shit fucked me up for a long time, but I'm definitely I'm a regionalist. I'm a regional writer, but for me that means that like the traditions that I'm most interested in, like not just mimicking, but like interrogating, happen to be Southern. You know what I'm saying? Happen to be Wright, happen to be Jesmond, happen to be Angie Thomas, happen to be Eudora. And that doesn't mean I'm only interested in fucking with those people, but like tradition sometimes means not just the people who influence you, but sometimes the people who you want to kind of go back in there and kind of remix, And so for me, Mississippi particularly, I'm always trying to remix those Mississippi writers.
Man, I envy it, man. I envy it because I think about what y'all are doing, what you and Jesmond, and Angie, and everybody, Dora, what y'all, and there's something about it that feels singular in an amazing way. And I just don't know. I mean, like, I think my biggest argument about the district is, my biggest, what I always fight for is like, Harlem Renaissance started in DC before they moved to Harlem, right? So like, I'm always thinking about the richness that gets wiped away from this particular city, because you always go from the south, from the southern parts of the country, and you come up the eastern seaboard, and then you skip over DC, right? So you get to like Richmond, right? And then it's like Philly, right? And it's like, wait. It's like, wait a second. There's all this history that took place here. And yes, we can use Howard University as the epicenter of that, but really the city in general bred all this stuff. And I think a lot of my work is just like, I just want to be a part of, in conversation with the people who came out of that space. But I don't, like, when I read your work or Jesmond's work, there's a sense of place in a very different way. Whereas mine is more just like a chip on my shoulder that I'm like, I'm gonna show y'all, DC got all kind of talent. And that's kind of where I'm at, you know what I mean?
I think the very idea of Cross River is just like, my town is just like bubble, comes from that idea that you're talking about, Jason. Like, there's just so many innovations in DC, in the DC area, and connected that to my parents are from Trinidad, so they came from another place that there's all these innovations, and cultural innovations that from in a very, very tiny space. Black cultural innovations in a very, very tiny space. So I think the very idea of that bubble that I'm creating comes from those two places.
Right. I think of two things. One, I think of DC as the first stop in the Great Migration, the first big stop, and at least on the East Side, right? And for that reason, because it's sort of in the middle, I think you have things like go-go. You have a cultural instinct to aggregate, and combine, elements that I think makes DC a really, really important place. Actually, the Southernness is there. About Baldwin, I'm a James Baldwin fan for sure. One of my things about Baldwin in the South, besides Jersey, the South, is that he never stayed there. I don't think he claimed to either, but he actually wrote it this way. He was like, I'm passing through, I'm a visitor, and I always thought that the dominant emotional tone of Baldwin's writing about the South was fear, really, and maybe right.
And what's interesting, Scott, is like, I'm a Baldwin disciple, right? But he just wasn't fair to Richard Wright, fam. He just wasn't fair to Richard Wright. He wasn't fair to Richard Wright for a lot of reasons, but I'm just gonna say geographically, like, Richard Wright is born in 1908, my nigga, in Mississippi. Not in Natchez, where people think, but in a town smaller than fucking Natchez. And this motherfucker makes himself a literary shield and a literary fucking sword in 1908. So I'm not trying to discredit what Baldwin went through, but I think all of these disses that Baldwin launches at Right and Many Thousands Gone and Notes of a Native Son and his eulogy in The Last Poor Richard, like, I just don't think I don't think, as someone who's super critical of Right, I don't think that they really embrace what it meant to be a nigga growing up in 1908 in Mississippi. Do you know what I mean? And what that does, real talk, to one's mental health. Mm-hmm. And I just think Baldwin could have been a little bit more fair with that brother, you know, geographically. For no other reason, just look at the geography of what he did, you know?
Do you think he saw it as an up, though? Do you think that he saw, right? I mean, Richard Wright was Boss Hogg. Do you think that I mean, look, we all disciples of Baldwin. But realistically, when Baldwin starts writing about Richard Wright, Baldwin starts forging a career. Do you think that Baldwin saw the opportunity and said, I'm going to keep swinging at the giant?
Yes.
I think he did, fam. But like, my point is that's definitely what he did. You know, he swung at the giant, and part of that is what you talked about earlier about a scarcity model. But my G, when the nigga is dead, you and under like the pretense of a eulogy, you still going at him. For those who like, he went after Richard Wright in an essay called A Last Poor Richard. He's gone now. Like, what you swinging for, fam? You Baldwin now. You know what I'm saying? So like, I agree, and Baldwin is part of the reason I'm here. But I think sometimes we forget, and Imani is always important at reminding us that Richard Wright is also one of the reasons a lot of us are here. And I think, you know, I don't even think Pac would have swung at Biggie after Biggie died. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't swing at a nigga when they die prematurely. And that's what Baldwin, who is responsible for a lot of us, did. And my point is not, I didn't mean to get off on that, but I just think he forgot about where that dude was from and what that dude was running from his entire life. You know, and I just don't think we need to ever forget that about people. That doesn't mean we need to let them off the hook. But I think geography is important because a lot of times it is origin, and origins sometimes are fucking forever, you know?
You got me going back.
Somebody said 50 going to swing at Ja immediately.
Yeah, you got me going back to Richard Wright. Look, I have to, man, I can make another drink and talk to y'all for at least another hour, but we're being warned about the time. So what I want to do is this actually leads us to a good place. I want to try to consolidate a couple of questions from the Q&A. And one of them is from Michael Julius Idani, who asks, let me just read the whole thing. Love the energy in the space. Can y'all touch on the relationship you each have with a mentor? And that's why I say it's relevant, sort of talking about influences. A mentor that either of you, okay. And then the question's kind of funny. All right. I think it's asking like who's mentored you, and also who's really supported you when you needed it, and how you try to model that in your own mentorship relationships. Which is a question I often ask when I sit down with important people. I say, who do you mentor? Who do you, you know, not how did you get here, but who do you mentor? So I think this question is double. You know, it's asking both those things. And actually, I think we've covered a lot of what's in the rest. So yeah. Well, there is a question about why there aren't as many Black female voices being represented in the arts right now. Aren't women artists blowing up as much right now? And I think I can tell by how y'all talk that a lot of you, as have I, have been mentored by women too in your work, in your craft. And I'd also point to the other editions of the ADAMA Arts Salons, and there have been some awesome women artists and thinkers represented. We just happen to be all guys today, but there's more to come for sure. So the question about mentorship that you've received and that you've given might be a good place to sort of wind us toward a conclusion. Who got you writing?
Fahamu just said that Tiari was invited but had a conflict. But I don't think the question was about representation on this panel.
No, it wasn't so specifically. I mean, I think we were all alert to it, for sure, and it was a matter of scheduling, frankly, in this case, but not something that's lost upon us.
I mean, I think I'll speak on that. I mean, I think we always got to be mindful of like the way, particularly like cis heteropatriarchy, like dictates who gets to be in a space. But I think like, you know, as everybody said, it does take a nuanced kind of like, I think it's a nuanced way to think about like what you see. So sometimes when people are like, how come there ain't no black women? Like from my POV, I'm always like, that says a lot about what you read, what you have chosen to read. Do you know? Because I mean, I think black women are fucking killing it right now. Do you know what I'm saying? Like.
I think the questioner did acknowledge that.
Okay. I mean, okay. I just wanted to say, because I mean, but, and I think there's no group of people in this country more than black women who put more into justice and liberatory fucking practice and get less. Like, I think black women put more shit in and get less. And I think black women artistically or literarily are fucking like killing it and should be killing it even more. And in terms of mentors, just to kind of segue that so we can get this going, is like, I mean, maybe I was uncoachable as a fucking young writer, but like, I didn't really have a mentor until Imani Perry, you know, and I was a mentor from afar, you know, and then I got to know Imani Perry, and then Imani Perry, but she never like, you know, she didn't like, you know, I'm gonna open this door for you, I'm gonna give you this fellowship, I'm gonna give you this publication opportunity. I think she mentored me in the ways of like keeping your heart and your soul and your practice on point, and never forgetting like a love of the South means a love of all people, of trans folks, of queer folks, of, you know what I'm saying? So like, that was the kind of mentoring I needed, I think. And she was the first one, and Lisa Lucas was the first person in New York to give me a shot. And from there, I find mentors in my peers, you know, like both of these brothers, I feel like in some ways, not just in terms of just being like people I love, they're also mentors. So I think sometimes you can look across at your mentor. You don't need to just look up.
Yeah. For me, it was similar. I mean, look, I got Jacqueline Woodson, who is one of my closest friends. You know what I'm saying? Rion, I know we have a similar situation. I found out recently about that, by the way. You never told me, brother.
My first writing teacher, man. She
told me. It all makes sense now. But I got Jackie. I had Walter Dean Myers. You know, he's gone now, but he was my OG. His son Chris Myers is still, you know, somebody that I go to often. I mean, look, and when we talk about mentorship, we're talking about writing stuff, yes, but they also gave me some game, right? Like, these were people who invited me over to their houses and told me to open up their royalty checks, and right, like very sort of transparent. Like, look, we need to have all these conversations that somehow they've convinced us are improper to have. We're gonna have all these talks so that you understand that this industry ain't doing you no favors. That this ain't a humanitarian. That's not what this is about. You do your work for all the right reasons, but please believe that they need you. You don't need them. And that was something given to me by these OGs. But even Kiese, Kiese gave me my first blurb. The first blurb I ever got came from Kiese, on the humble, right? Like, and you know, so I agree in lateral mentorship as well. You know what I mean? You can look to your peers and see them as gold. And I think there's value in that, and that we need more of that. You know what I mean? For sure.
I'm glad Jason mentioned Jackie. I was at I did this National Book Foundation writing program. They don't have it anymore, but when I was 17, and Jackie Woodson, Cornelius Eady, Norma Fox Mazer, those were my teachers. And you know, I learned from Jackie just how serious you take this writing thing. It's not a joke. It's not a game. People take your work seriously. You have to take it seriously. And just watching that was incredible. You know, I have a fellowship, the Kimbilio, part of the writing group Kimbilio, which is like comic fiction, Black writers. Shout out to all my Kimbilio people in here. Like Candace is in here, Nancy Johnson's in here. You know, that's a space that I found I found, lateral mentorship. I was the first time I went, I hadn't published anything, and Mina Gauthier put me up on a whole lot of game. So shout out to David Haynes for putting that space together for Black writers. And he's another one where I think Kimbilio sort of drilled into me one of the things that, how important it is to stand up for and to watch out for other Black writers. And it's something that I've put in practice. I've moved differently because of Kimbilio. Talk about lateral mentorship. I've always watch what Kiese is doing, so some of my interviews, it's just like, how Kiese, has said things in his interview, as a model, lateral mentorship, that's important. There's a lot of people, I think Arthur Flowers, who doesn't get talked about enough. Is a dude. I wrote this book called The Revelation of Everything, and he read the entire book. he read the entire book. Gave me. It's like, man, this is great. Gave me. It didn't get published. He put me on to his agent. He didn't have to do that. Now that I'm writing and I'm publishing, I realize how much work that is to actually sit down and read someone's 300, 400 page manuscript. And then send it to the agent. That's a lot, And that brother did that for me, and he does that all the time for people,
Yeah, and I say we should, just so we can continue this love fest on Kiese, because it is important that he gets his things. Because I think there is the way that we can model, right? It doesn't have to always be a hands-on thing. It could just be a modeling in sort of how one moves. And I think Kiese has a way of extending himself, right? There's an interesting thing that he does. He always puts sort of his love for Black people is always he leads with that thing. And I think, like, as I have lots of mentees, people that I'm bringing up, people that I want to cultivate, but a lot of that is coming from a place of like stretching myself because I'm exhausted and impatient and have all the other things going on in my life. And in those moments, you're like, yo, but Kiese read your book and gave you a blurb and nobody knew who you were, right? And those are the moments, and it seems so small, right? It seems small probably to him, but for a young writer coming up, who was looking at this person as this person, and to know that he read the novel, never flinched, wrote me the blurb in a timely fashion. I think these are things that we all can model moving forward when it comes to being selfless to the other folks coming into this game, trying to figure out how to get their words and their work out in the world. So shout out to inspiration and mentorship through modeling. You know what I mean?
And I just want to say, it's the duel, right? Like, that was the first blurb anybody had ever asked me to write. I told you this before.
Yeah.
And you approached me. We was in a barbershop. You know what I'm saying? We was in a beauty salon. And so anyway, y'all, I'm thankful and I appreciate y'all making this happen today. Thank you so much, Scott.
Oh, thank you. I want to shout out Soyini Madison for a long time ago, encouraging me to write the way I write, and encouraging me that you can be thoughtful and theoretical and also beautiful in your work all at once. And thank y'all. Thanks to Adama. Thanks to Fahamu Peku. Thank you for all of the people who've been in the chat and the Q&A.
Thanks, Scott.
I think you can probably keep talking. I think this will be posted on YouTube, so if people want to review it or review it and keep commenting, talk to each other. I noticed a lot of people in the chat are talking to one another, and that's cool.
Eloquent Way, and somebody just shouted out Eloquent Rage too. If y'all haven't gotten that by Brittany Cooper, pick that joint up. It's crucial reading for this time
joint
here.
right here too. Black Imagination.
Woo!
Y'all got this, Rion? You got this joint?
Oh yeah, blurbed it.
Natasha Marin. Hey, everybody need to get this joint for sure.
Yeah, I love it. It's incredible.
People in the chat are asking for a reading list. There it is. Man, I wish we could go longer. I guess that's it for today. Everybody take care of themselves in all of these intersecting crises, all this stuff that's happening out here. Pay attention, you know what I mean? And still not loving police.
Peace, bro. Good to see y'all.
I love it.